So, the first thing we want to do is define what it looks like in our classrooms, in our learning environments. So, starting with classroom learning, what does that look like when kids do individual work? What does it look like when they're in the classroom doing digital work? And what does collaborative work look like? Because that's the most familiar to us to define. Then we move to, well, let's move to virtual learning, the remote learning, because that's our reality right now. So, what does individual work time look like for your class and your expectations for your students during remote learning? What does digital class time look like? And it's worth looking at what does collaborative time remotely look like as well. So, defining what that might be, and then being able to share those definitions with our students. And then there's hybrid learning, individual, digital, and classroom work. So if we were to move to a hybrid learning situation, what would that look like for your classroom and your content? So these are the things we have control over defining is what we want these situations to look like. We've got three types of engagement that we want to consistently try to promote even in a remote environment. Cognitive can be a quick write, a highlight, these things like an annotation, drawing a picture, reordering information. So all of that, we can have them do that on paper to start. That could be through digital resources, but cognitively they are engaged. So taking notes on slides or videos or presentations, that's compliance, not actual cognitive engagement. The cognitive engagement is when they're working with stuff, they're chewing on our information. So physical right now is super hard, right? So they can stand and do chair stretches. They can stand during an activity. We can't really do the pair-ups unless we're outside. And the walk 5 and group up is something that probably we're not going to do tons of physical grouping. So just keeping in mind, the kids still need that physical engagement and that cue. Finally, social engagement. Back channeling will be a great way for social engagement using the discussion features in Canvas. Using breakout rooms. WebEx will have that coming this fall. Shared documents and organizers. All of those things would be beneficial for our students to socially still be collaborating and engaging. Using technology in our remote classes with purpose. So the consumptions like our Depth of Knowledge 1 of technology, they're going to watch videos, they're going to have readings, they're going to take notes and look at slides. That's just a given. That's our direct instruction component of using technology. But when they're assessing, we should have them create. Give them these 5 bullets under creating: the podcast, infographics, presentations, videos, and websites. Ask them to choose. So having them create a product to show mastery, and then having that rubric so that it actually aligns with those priority standards, and they actually have to show and determine what does a mastery look like for that priority standard, and how am I doing that in my podcast. So that creation piece will be great for assessment. The collaborating and curating that's happening during the learning process. So before they create those products, they might be looking at shared slides or doing group writes or back channeling. They might be gathering and curating information together, having the whole class put information on a Padlet. So if you read the same novel across the class, then everyone might contribute a quote or two to support certain statements from the book, from your text. So they would find quotes and they could all share their evidence. You could do that with current events and then read 3 other current events and comment on them. So just really using technology purposefully in ways that are going to get the collaboration and get that demonstration of learning. The 2 types of learning we're going to be looking at is synchronous and asynchronous. So synchronous learning is going to happen most likely in those online meetings with our students, in those WebEx meetings. That's the real-time synchronous. What do we want them to do when we can all be together? So discussions, community building, maybe you do a 15-minute lesson. Asynchronous learning is self-paced, personalized. You're going to have lots of mini lessons and videos. They'll be working towards a project, possibly reflecting, and then having back channel discussions when necessary. So asynchronous is they know what they're working towards. They're just getting there in their own way. But synchronous is all together benefits that we can have there. So I think the largest thing I heard last year was that kids just aren't motivated, but that's not that different than like before COVID. Kids just in general, it takes kind of like a certain little science and magic to make them motivated about our content. So knowing what science says about motivation is that number 1 thing is make them curious, make them wonder, give them a random picture To them, it's random. It's associated with what you're about to learn, and see what conclusions they draw from that image. Give them essential questions. Prompt them with themes and inquiry-based learning. Autonomy and choice, allowing them to choose from a choice board. Having them look at explore, flip, apply, because that's kind of that self-pacing again, and they're choosing the resources out of the ones you've provided. HyperDocs offers some choice. So looking at those things to offer choice and autonomy in their learning, connecting them to real-world problems and their using authentic resources so they can see a connection to their life. So using podcasts, using real news feed, like looking at things that directly relate to today. Collaboration, those back channels, have students expressing their thought, Flipgrid, competence and confidence, that constant feedback, make them feel like they know how to do it and they can do it. Those are things that we, in dialoguing with them through feedback, not grading feedback, but dialoguing with them, can help motivate them as well. So as you're looking at design for remote learning, you're going to be limiting yourself to about 2 or 3 fonts, limiting colors to 2 or 3, and then have simple and clear visions and navigation bars, and have that real easy capability to maneuver from page to page. HyperDocs is a great way to start to have your students engage so that it kind of releases you a little bit so you're able to focus on that feedback. So going through a HyperDoc, the first thing is the engagement. You have some kind of like interesting thing to kick off the lesson. Explore, you give them resources, and then explain. You take care of the explain piece. That's either you telling them or little videos or whatever it is, that's where kind of the teacher steps in. Apply, give them options here. How do you want them to apply? They should share, reflect, and then extend. That should take you about 1 to 2 weeks, and then, or the students 1 to 2 weeks, and then you have time to really focus in on how you're giving them feedback, how you're encouraging them along the way. If you go to hyperdoc.co, you will find templates and resources and samples there. The other one is Explore, Flip, Apply. So Explore, Flip, Apply, you have a template here as well. Explore is going to give you, that's your essential questions and your kind of themes, and then the idea that you want them to explore. The Flip is all your resources, and the Apply, how do they demonstrate learning? That might be that creation piece with technology. Finally, if and when we ever go to hybrid, what's the best way to spend face-to-face time? And that face-to-face time should be spent creating, evaluating, analyzing, applying. Anything on the days that they're not with you should be remembering, understanding, maybe some applying. But that that top row, the creating, evaluating, and analyzing is what we should do when we have students all together. So that same thing goes with flipped learning. So in flipped learning, the direct instruction is at home and the meaningful engagement is in class. So again, how are we spending face-to-face time? The true goal of flipped learning is to spend face-to-face time with every student every day. So I mean, obviously that's not reality right now, correct? Like we can't spend that face-to-face quality time virtually with our students necessarily. There's just not enough time in the day. But when we have them in a hybrid situation, how do we make the most meaningful face-to-face engagement time really count when they come to see us in class? I've had the question prompted that if I normally lecture 2/3 of the time, what does that look like now? It looks like mini lessons, screen and processing breaks, lots of formative checks, and lots of feedback. And so 25 to 50% of the time is what is recommended by the district for direct instruction. So what you want to do here is that break up your lessons into tiny parts and like giving them breaks in between, formatively check multiple times in every single day, have those formative checks. And what does homework look like? Well, if we go back to the stress in the brain, homework is going to be limited. It's going to be focused on those priority standards. It's going to be focused on promoting mastery. It's going to be using technology in a purposeful way and designed in a way that you can provide feedback on that homework, not just a grade.